Jake Morrison looked out at the stars through the bridge window of his ship. The Horizon Dawn. The small patrol vessel moved slowly through the dark space near the edge of human territory. Jake had been doing these routine missions for 3 years now, and they were usually quiet. Too quiet most of the time. "All systems normal, sir," said his communications officer, Danny Walsh. The young man had only been with the crew for 6 months, but he was good at his job. No unusual readings on any of the sensors. Jake nodded and checked his watch. They were 2 hours into their 8-hour patrol. The Earth Defense Force had been sending more ships to the outer rim lately. Command was worried about something, though they never told the patrol crews what exactly. There had been reports of strange signals and missing ships, but nothing concrete. "Keep scanning," Jake said. "Sometimes the quiet ones turn into the interesting ones." His pilot, Karen Miller, laughed from her seat. "You always say that, sir. When was the last time we actually found something interesting out here?" Before Jake could answer, every alarm on the bridge started screaming at once. The lights flashed red, and the ship shook hard enough to throw everyone against their seats. What the hell was that? Jake shouted over the noise. Danny's fingers flew over his controls. His face went pale. "Sir, we've got multiple contacts coming. In fast, really fast. I've never seen anything move like this." Jake looked at the main screen. 5 massive ships were closing in on them, each one 10 times the size of the Horizon Dawn. They were sleek and dark, with strange curves that hurt to look at for too long. The ships moved in perfect formation, like they were connected by invisible strings. "Where did they come from?" Jake demanded. "They just appeared, sir," Karen said, her voice shaking. 1 second there was nothing. The next second they were there. Like they dropped out of nowhere. Jake's mind raced. These weren't human ships. The Earth Defense Force had nothing that looked like this or moved like this. That meant only one thing. Humanity had finally met someone else among the stars. And judging by the way his ship was shaking, they weren't friendly. "Danny, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we've made contact with unknown alien vessels. Send our location and everything we've recorded." "Already done, sir. But I don't think they're going to get it in time." The alien ships surrounded the Horizon Dawn completely. Jake watched as strange lights began to glow along their hulls. He had seen enough weapons in his military career to know what was coming. "Next, all hands, prepare for combat," he announced over the ship's communication system. "This is not a drill. We are engaged with hostile alien forces." The words felt strange coming out of his mouth. Alien forces. After all the years of wondering if humanity was alone in the universe, this was how they got their answer. The first alien weapon hit the Horizon Dawn like a giant hammer. The ship's shields flickered and died instantly. Jake felt the deck plates buckle under his feet. Sparks flew from damaged consoles, and the lights went out for a moment before the emergency power kicked in. "Shields are down," Karen shouted. "Main engines are offline. We're sitting ducks." Jake grabbed his command chair as another blast rocked the ship. "Return fire. Everything we've got." The Horizon Dawn's weapons were designed to fight other human ships, not these alien monsters. The small laser cannons and missile tubes fired everything they had, but the alien ships barely seemed to notice. Their attacks bounced off the enemy hulls like raindrops on glass. "It's not working, sir," Danny called out. "Our weapons aren't even scratching them." A third blast tore through the ship's hull. Jake heard the terrible sound of metal tearing and air rushing out into space. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut, sealing off the damaged sections. But Jake knew it was too late. His ship was dying. "Danny, Karen, get to the escape pods," he ordered. "What about you, sir?" Karen asked. "I'm staying with the ship." "Maybe I can buy you some time." But even as he said it, Jake knew it was hopeless. The alien ships were too powerful, too advanced. The Horizon Dawn was a good ship with a good crew, but they were facing something beyond anything humanity had ever imagined. The aliens hit the ship again, and this time Jake heard the sound he had been dreading, the deep groan of the hull beginning to break apart. The artificial gravity failed, and everyone on the bridge started floating. Pod Bay is sealed off. Danny shouted, "We can't get to the escape pods." Jake looked at the main screen one more time. The alien ships were moving closer, and he could see strange symbols glowing on their hulls. They looked like writing, but not like any human language he had ever seen. Suddenly, one of the alien ships fired something different. Instead of the destructive energy beams they had been using, this was a blue light that surrounded the horizon. Dawn like a web. Jake felt a strange tingling sensation, and then everything went black. When Jake woke up, he was lying on a cold metal floor in a room he had never seen before. The walls were smooth and curved, made of some kind of dark material that seemed to absorb light. Strange symbols covered every surface, glowing with a soft blue light. He tried to sit up and immediately felt dizzy. His head pounded like someone had hit him with a hammer. Looking around, he realized he was alone. There was no sign of Danny or Corinne or any of the other crew members. A door opened in the wall, though Jake hadn't seen any door there before. Two figures walked in, and Jake's breath caught in his throat. They were tall, at least 7 feet, with gray skin that looked like it had never seen sunlight. Their heads were larger than human heads, with big black eyes that seemed to look right through him. The aliens looked down at Jake with what might have been curiosity. One of them said something in a language that sounded like music mixed with static. The other one replied, and Jake heard what sounded almost like laughter. One of the aliens pointed a device at Jake. A beam of light hit him, and suddenly he could understand what they were saying. "This is the creature from the primitive ship," the first alien said. "It appears to be conscious now." "Good," the second alien replied. "High Commander Zefek wants to examine it personally. This species is new to us. We must learn if they will make good slaves." Jake's blood ran cold. Slaves. These aliens had attacked his ship, killed his crew, and now they were talking about enslaving humanity. He tried to stand up, but his legs wouldn't support him. Whatever they had done to him had left him weak. "The creature is trying to move," the first alien observed. "It shows more resistance than most species do after neural scanning. That might make it more valuable," the second alien said. "The stronger ones often make better workers once they are properly broken." Jake wanted to fight, to show these aliens that humans weren't easy to break, but his body wouldn't obey him. He could only lie there and listen as they discussed his fate like he was a piece of property. "Bring it to the conditioning chambers," the first alien ordered. "We will begin the process immediately. By the time we reach the homeworld, this creature will be ready to join the others." As the aliens lifted Jake and carried him out of the room, he caught a glimpse through a window. Outside, he could see a massive fleet of alien ships stretching out into the darkness. There were hundreds of them, maybe thousands. And somewhere among them, he knew, were the remains of his ship and his crew. Jake closed his eyes and tried to think. He was alone, captured by aliens who wanted to make him a slave. But he was still alive, and as long as he was alive, he could fight. He didn't know how yet, but he would find a way. He had to, because if these aliens were heading toward Earth, humanity was going to need all the help it could get. Jake woke up in a different room this time. The walls were made of the same dark material, but this room was bigger and filled with strange machines. Tubes and wires connected the machines to a chair in the center of the room. Jake was strapped to that chair. A tall alien stood beside the chair, watching him with those big black eyes. This alien was different from the others Jake had seen. It wore what looked like a uniform with bright symbols on it, and there was something about the way it moved that suggested authority. "You are awake," the alien said in Jake's language. "Good. I am High Commander Zefek of the Vorthic Empire. You are the first of your species we have encountered." Jake tried to speak, but his throat was dry. "Water," he managed to croak. Zefek tilted his head, like he was studying an interesting bug. "Your species requires liquid intake for survival. This information will be useful when we process the rest of your kind." A smaller alien brought a container of water and held it to Jake's lips. The water tasted strange, but Jake was too thirsty to care. After he drank, he felt a little stronger. "Where are my crew?" Jake asked. "Dead," Zefek said without emotion. "They were not needed. You, however, are interesting. Our scans show that your species has unusual brain patterns. You may be more valuable than the typical slave species." Jake felt anger rise in his chest. "We're not slaves. We are human beings with rights and dignity." Zefek made a sound that might have been laughter. "Rights? Dignity? These are concepts that only the strong can afford. Your species is weak, primitive. Your ships are crude, your weapons are toys. You exist now only because we allow it. You haven't seen what humans can do when we fight back," Jake said. "Fight back?" Zefek seemed genuinely amused. "With what?" "We destroyed your vessel in minutes. Your entire species could not build enough ships to challenge even one of our battle fleets." Zefek walked around the chair, studying Jake like a scientist examining a specimen. "But you are correct about one thing. Humans do seem different from other species we have enslaved. Most creatures break within hours of neural conditioning. You have been unconscious for 3 days while we studied your mind, yet you still speak. Of resistance, 3 days." Jake tried to process this information. His ship was destroyed 3 days ago. By now, Earth Command would know something had happened. They would be looking for him, but Jake doubted they would find him in time. "Tell me about your world," Zefek commanded. "How many of your kind exist? What defenses do you have?" "Go to hell," Jake said. Zefek's expression didn't change. Another interesting response. "Most species beg for mercy at this point. You offer insults instead." He gestured to the smaller alien. "Begin the deep conditioning process." The machines around. Jake's chair began to hum with power. Lights flashed in patterns that hurt to look at. Jake felt something trying to push into his mind, like invisible fingers digging into his thoughts. He gritted his teeth and fought against it. "Curious," Zefek said, watching the readouts on the machines. "Your mental resistance is far higher than expected. Most species submit within minutes." Jake held on, pushing back against the alien intrusion in his mind. He thought about his crew, about Earth, about everything he was fighting for. The mental pressure grew stronger, but Jake refused to give in. After what felt like hours, the machines powered down. Zefek looked at the data with what might have been surprise. "Remarkable," he said. "Your mind rejected 70% of the conditioning protocols. This level of resistance is unprecedented." "Told you," Jake said weakly. "Humans don't break easy." "Perhaps not," Zefek agreed, "but you will break eventually. We have time, and we have methods you cannot imagine. For now, you will be taken to the work camps. Manual labor will soften your resistance." 2 guards, smaller aliens with weapons, unstrapped Jake from the chair and dragged him out of the room. They walked through corridors filled with the same strange symbols Jake had seen before. Other aliens passed them, all going about their business like capturing and enslaving other species was just another normal day. The guards took Jake to a large cargo bay where dozens of other creatures were working. Jake had never seen beings like these before. Some were small and insect-like, with 4 arms and shining eyes. Others were tall and covered in fur, with hands that looked like they could crush steel. A few looked almost human, but with blue skin and strange markings on their faces. All of them wore the same gray uniforms. All of them moved with the slow, defeated pace of broken spirits. "Another new slave," one of the guards said to a creature that seemed to be in charge. This one looked like a cross between a lizard and a bird, with scales and feathers mixed together. "The High Commander wants this one watched carefully." The supervisor looked at Jake with tired eyes. "What species?" "Human. First one we've captured." "Humans," the supervisor repeated, like he was filing the information away. "Never heard of them. Put him with the Zilani. They can teach him the work." The guards pushed Jake toward a group of the small, insect-like creatures. One of them looked up at Jake with multifaceted eyes that reflected light like jewels. "I am Kix," the creature said in a voice like wind chimes. "You are the new slave. What is your designation?" "My name is Jake," Jake said. "Jake Morrison. Name?" Kix tilted his head. "You still remember your name?" "Most forget within a few days of conditioning." "I wasn't fully conditioned," Jake said. "I resisted it." Several of the other creatures nearby stopped working and looked at Jake with something like amazement. One of the furry, tall creatures stepped closer. "You resisted the neural conditioning?" it asked in a deep, rumbling voice. "How is this possible?" "I don't know," Jake admitted. "I just refused to let them into my head." "Incredible," the creature said. "I am Grok of the Corn. We were a warrior people once, before the Vorthik enslaved us. None of us could resist the conditioning." "How long have you been here?" Jake asked. "Time has no meaning in slavery," Grok said sadly. "My people were conquered when I was young. I have worked in these ships for more cycles than I can count." Jake looked around at all the enslaved beings. "How many species have they captured?" "Hundreds," Kix said. "The Vorthik Empire spans many star systems. They take what they want and enslave whoever they find. We are just tools to them." "But you're all intelligent beings," Jake said. "You can think, you can talk. How can they treat you like this?" "Because they have the power," Grok said. "They have the ships, the weapons, the technology. We have nothing." Jake watched the aliens working around him. They moved slowly, without hope or purpose beyond avoiding punishment. Their captors had broken their spirits so completely that they couldn't even imagine fighting back. But Jake wasn't broken. The neural conditioning had failed on him, which meant his mind was still his own. And if his mind was free, maybe he could find a way to help the others remember what freedom felt like. "What kind of work do you do here?" Jake asked. "We maintain the ships," Kix explained. "The Vorthik are too important to do manual labor. They make us repair their machines, clean their vessels, prepare their food. We are their hands and feet." "So you know how their technology works?" "Some of it," Kix said carefully. "Why do you ask?" Jake looked around to make sure no guards were listening. "Because knowledge is power. And if we're going to be working with their machines, we should understand them completely." Grok caught Jake's meaning first. "You speak of dangerous thoughts, human." "Maybe," Jake said. "But I'd rather have dangerous thoughts than no thoughts at all." Over the next several hours, Jake learned about life as a slave in the Vorthik Empire. The work was hard and the conditions were harsh, but the real punishment was the hopelessness. The aliens had been enslaved for so long that they had forgotten what it meant to be free, but Jake remembered. And as he worked alongside his fellow slaves, he began to plant seeds of that memory in their minds. He asked questions about their home worlds, their families, their dreams. Most of them had trouble answering at first, but slowly, painfully, they began to remember. "You are playing a dangerous game," Grok warned him during a brief rest period. The Vorthik do not tolerate rebellion. Then maybe it's time they learn to, Jake said. That night, as Jake lay on the hard metal floor of the slave quarters, he stared up at the ceiling and made a promise to himself. He would find a way to escape. He would warn Earth about the Vorthik threat. And somehow, someway, he would come back for these enslaved beings who had forgotten how to hope. The Vorthik thought they had captured just another primitive creature to add to their collection of slaves. They had no idea that they had just made the biggest mistake in their empire's history. 2 months had passed since Jake's capture, and he had learned to survive in the Vorthik slave system. Every day brought the same routine. Wake up, work for 16 hours, eat the bland food they were given, and collapse on the hard sleeping platforms. But Jake was doing more than just surviving. He was building something the Vorthik had never seen before. The power coupling in Section 7 is loose again, Kix reported during their morning work assignment. The small Zilani had become Jake's closest friend among the slaves. His people were natural engineers, and they understood the Vorthik technology better than anyone. Loose or deliberately loosened? Jake asked quietly. Kix's eyes sparkled with something that might have been mischief. Perhaps it became loose on its own. These old ships have many problems. Jake smiled. Over the past weeks, he had been teaching the other slaves something they had almost forgotten, how to think for themselves. It started small, with simple questions about their work and their lives. But slowly, carefully, Jake had begun to show them that they didn't have to be perfect. Slaves. Grok, how's the food delivery system? Jake asked. The big Koran looked up from the machinery he was repairing. It seems to be working slower than usual. The Vorthik may have to wait longer for their meals today. That's a shame, Jake said. I'm sure it will be fixed soon. These small acts of rebellion had started almost by accident. Jake had been working on a ventilation system when he realized he could adjust the airflow to make the Vorthik quarters uncomfortably warm. It was a tiny thing, but it felt good to fight back in some small way. When he told the other slaves about it, they were terrified at first. But Jake helped them understand that the Vorthik couldn't punish them for every little mechanical problem. The aliens needed their slaves to keep the ships running, and they couldn't tell the difference between honest mistakes and subtle sabotage. There is someone you should meet, Kix said to Jake later that day. She is different from the others. During their rest period, Kix led Jake to a quiet corner of the slave quarters. There, sitting alone, was a being Jake had never seen before. She looked almost human, but her skin was pale blue and her eyes were silver. She seemed to be staring at something only she could see. This is Lyra, Kix said. She is Mistai. Her people have abilities the Vorthik do not understand. Jake sat down beside Lyra. Hello, he said softly. Lyra turned to look at him, and Jake felt a strange sensation, like someone walking through his mind. You are the human, she said in a voice like distant music. The one who resists? Yes, Jake said. I'm Jake. I have been listening to the thoughts of the Vorthik, Lyra said. They are worried about you. They do not understand why their conditioning failed. Jake felt a chill. You can read minds? Not exactly, Lyra said. I can sense emotions, intentions, surface thoughts. The Vorthik tried to suppress this ability in my people, but they never fully succeeded. What have you learned about them? Lyra closed her eyes for a moment. They are afraid, she said finally. They have ruled for so long that they have forgotten how to fight. Their warriors are soft. Their leaders are complacent. They rely entirely on their technology and their slaves. That's useful information. Jake said, What else? They are planning something, Lyra said, her voice troubled. A great expansion. They have learned the location of your homeworld from your mind during the initial scan. They are gathering a fleet to invade your species. Jake's blood ran cold. When? Soon. They believe your people will be easy to conquer, like all the others. Jake stood up quickly. We have to do something. We have to warn Earth somehow. How? Kix asked. We are slaves on a ship in the middle of space. We have no weapons, no communication devices, no way to escape. Then we make our own way, Jake said. Look around you. This ship is full of enslaved beings from hundreds of different species. Each group has different abilities, different knowledge. Together, we might be able to accomplish something none of us could do alone. Over the following weeks, Jake began to organize the slaves in ways the Vorthik had never imagined. He started with the beings he knew best, Kix and his fellow Zelani, Grok and the remaining Koran, and Lyra with her mental abilities. The Zelani, Jake learned, were incredible engineers. They could interface with electronic systems using their natural bioelectric fields, accessing computer networks in ways that looked like magic. The Koran, despite generations of slavery, still remembered their warrior training. Their bodies were built for combat, with strength and reflexes that far exceeded human abilities. My people were telepathically linked, Lyra explained during one of their secret meetings. The Vorthik broke most of those links, but some remain. I can communicate with other Mistai on different ships in the fleet. How many ships are there? Jake asked. Hundreds, Lyra said. Each one carries thousands of slaves from dozens of species. If we could coordinate with them, we could have an army, Jake finished. But Jake knew that having an army wasn't enough. They needed a plan, and they needed to be smart about it. The Vorthik had superior technology and weapons. A direct confrontation would be suicide. We need to think like humans, Jake told the group. My species has always been good at one thing, fighting enemies who are stronger than us. We use cunning, we use strategy, and we use our enemy's strength against them. What do you propose? Grok asked. We turn their own ships against them, Jake said. The Vorthik have made themselves completely dependent on slave labor. They don't know how to maintain their own technology anymore. If we can coordinate a fleet-wide work stoppage, we can cripple their entire military. And then what? Kix asked. They will simply kill us all. Maybe, Jake admitted. But if we do it right, if we time it perfectly, we might be able to take control of some of their ships. And if we can do that, we can send a warning to Earth. The plan was ambitious and dangerous. Jake knew that most of the slaves would die if they tried this. But he also knew that billions of humans would die if the Vorthik invasion succeeded. There is something else, Lyra said quietly. The Vorthik are not the only ones watching you. There are others among the slaves who have noticed your activities. Some of them are afraid of what you might do. Jake wasn't surprised. After generations of slavery, many of the enslaved beings had lost the ability to hope. The idea of rebellion terrified them more than the certainty of continued slavery. Can we trust them? Jake asked. Some of them, Lyra said. But others, ... Others might betray us to win favor with the Vorthik. Jake nodded. Then we need to be more careful. We'll work with small groups, beings we can trust completely. And we'll have backup plans for our backup plans. As the days passed, Jake's network of resistance grew. He learned that the Vorthik had enslaved species with incredible abilities. Beings who could phase through solid matter, others who could manipulate electromagnetic fields, and some who could survive in the vacuum of space. Each group had been broken and suppressed by the Vorthik conditioning, but Jake's human stubbornness was infectious. Slowly, carefully, he helped them remember what they had been before slavery. He helped them remember what they could be again. The Vorthik have made a crucial mistake, Jake told his core group during one of their secret meetings. They think that enslaving someone's body means enslaving their spirit, but you can't chain a mind that refuses to be chained. You speak like a leader, Grok observed. Among my people, you would be called a war chief. I'm not trying to be a leader, Jake said. I'm trying to be a catalyst. Something that starts a reaction and then gets out of the way. And what reaction are you trying to start? Lyra asked. Jake smiled grimly. The biggest slave rebellion in galactic history. The Vorthok had no idea what was building in the depths of their own ships. They saw the same broken slaves they had always seen, going through the same motions they had always gone through. They didn't notice that the slaves were talking to each other more, or that they were looking at their guards with something other than fear. High Commander Zefek occasionally asked about the human slave, but his subordinates always reported that Jake was working satisfactorily. They didn't mention the small mechanical problems that were becoming more frequent, or the way other slaves seemed to gather around the human during rest periods. Jake knew that time was running out. Every day brought the Vorthok fleet closer to Earth. Soon they would arrive at humanity's doorstep with overwhelming force and an army of enslaved beings to do their dirty work. Jake also knew that he was building something that could change everything. For the first time in centuries, the slaves were beginning to remember what freedom felt like. And once that memory was fully awakened, no force in the galaxy would be able to stop them. The Vorthok had enslaved one human, thinking they had captured another weak creature to add to their collection. Instead, they had brought aboard the one thing that could destroy their entire empire: hope. Captain Lisa Stone stood in the command center of the Earth Defense Force headquarters, staring at the holographic display that showed the wreckage of Jake Morrison's ship. 3 months had passed since the Horizon Dawn went missing, and the search teams had finally found what was left of it. The debris field is consistent with advanced energy weapons, reported Dr. Alex Turner, the Defense Force's top scientist. Whatever hit them was far beyond anything we've ever encountered. Lisa nodded grimly. She had served alongside Jake for 5 years, and she knew he was too good an officer to get caught by anything human technology could produce. What about the alien materials we found? That's the interesting part, Alex said, manipulating the holographic display. We've managed to reverse engineer some of the components. The technology is incredibly advanced, but it's not impossible to understand. We're talking about energy manipulation on a scale we've never seen before. Admiral Ryan Cooper, the head of the Earth Defense Force, stepped forward. How advanced are we talking about? They're centuries ahead of us in most areas, Alex admitted, but there are some strange gaps in their technology. It's almost like they've become dependent on certain systems and stopped innovating in others. Lisa studied the data. Any idea where they came from? We've been tracking the energy signatures, Alex said. Based on the residual traces, we think they came from the Vega system, about 25 light years away. That's a long way to travel. Just to destroy one patrol ship, Admiral Cooper observed. Unless they weren't just destroying it, Lisa said. What if they were studying it, learning about us? The room fell silent as the implications of that statement sank in. If hostile aliens had captured a human ship and crew, they now had detailed information about Earth's location and defenses. We need to know more, Admiral Cooper decided. Lisa, I want you to take the new stealth ship and conduct a reconnaissance mission. Find out what we're dealing with. Sir, that's a deep space mission into unknown territory, Lisa said. If these aliens are as advanced as we think, they'll detect any ship we send. Not necessarily, Alex interrupted. We've been working on some new stealth technology based on the alien materials. It might be enough to get you close without being detected. Lisa looked at the holographic display again, thinking about Jake. He was probably dead, but if there was any chance he was still alive, she had to try to find him. I'll need a small, fast ship with the best crew we can assemble. You'll have it, Admiral Cooper promised. But Lisa, this is a reconnaissance mission only. Your job is to gather intelligence and return to Earth. We need to know what we're facing before we can plan any kind of response. 2 weeks later, Lisa was aboard the reconnaissance vessel New Horizon, heading toward the Vega system. Her crew was small but skilled, only 8 people including herself. They had been chosen for their ability to work quietly and efficiently under pressure. Stealth systems are operating at maximum efficiency, reported her technical officer, Ben Clark. If this new technology works as advertised, we should be invisible to most sensor systems. Let's hope it works, Lisa said, because if it doesn't, we're going to have a very short mission. The journey to the Vega system took 3 days using the new experimental drive systems. As they approached the outer edge of the system, Lisa's crew began detecting signs of massive artificial activity. "Captain, you need to see this," called out Amy Rodriguez, the ship's sensor operator. "I'm reading hundreds of ships in the inner system. Maybe thousands." Lisa looked at the sensor display and felt her heart sink. The alien fleet was enormous, far larger than anything Earth could hope to match. The ships were arranged in perfect formations, like a military parade frozen in space. "Are they all military vessels?" Lisa asked. "It's hard to tell," Amy said, "but they're all using the same energy signatures we found at Jake's crash site. This is definitely the same species that attacked the Horizon Dawn." As they moved closer, staying hidden behind the stealth fields, Lisa began to understand the scope of what they were facing. This wasn't just a small raiding force. This was an entire civilization built around war and conquest. "Captain," called out Marcus Webb, their communications officer, "I'm picking up transmissions from the alien fleet. The computer is trying to translate them, but it's going to take time." "Keep working on it," Lisa said. "Any information we can get about their intentions will be valuable." Hours passed as they studied the alien fleet from a distance. Lisa's crew mapped the ships, analyzed their energy signatures, and tried to understand their technology. What they found was both encouraging and terrifying. "They're powerful," Ben reported, "but they're also predictable. Their formations are rigid. Their patrol patterns are routine. It's like they've been doing the same thing for so long that they've forgotten how to adapt." "That might be an advantage," Lisa said. "What about their communications?" "I'm getting some basic translations," Marcus said. "They call themselves the Vorthic Empire, and Captain ... They're talking about Earth." Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. "What are they saying?" "They're planning an invasion," Marcus said quietly. "They're gathering ships from across their empire for a major offensive. They think Earth will be easy to conquer." "When?" Lisa demanded. "Soon," Marcus said. "Maybe weeks, maybe less." Lisa stared at the alien fleet, trying to process the magnitude of the threat. Earth had perhaps 100 military vessels, most of them designed for patrol duties or asteroid mining operations. The Vorthic had thousands of ships, each one more advanced than anything humanity had ever built. "There's something else," Amy said suddenly. "I'm detecting unusual energy patterns from some of the ships. It's almost like there's some kind of internal conflict going on." "What kind of conflict?" Lisa asked. "I can't tell for sure, but some of the ships are showing signs of system failures and power fluctuations. Either they're having technical problems, or someone is causing them problems." Lisa felt a spark of hope. Could it be sabotage? "It's possible," Amy said. "But who would be sabotaging Vorthic ships from the inside?" Before anyone could answer, Marcus called out urgently, "Captain, we're receiving a transmission. It's human." Lisa spun around. "What?" "It's weak and heavily encoded, but it's definitely human in origin. Someone is trying to communicate with us from inside the alien fleet." Lisa's heart raced. "Can you clean up the signal?" Marcus worked frantically at his console. "I'm trying, but it's heavily distorted. Wait ... I'm getting something. A crackling voice came through the speakers, broken and filled with static, but unmistakably human. Earth ship. If you can hear this, Jake Morrison. Still alive. Vorthic planning invasion. Not what they seem. Jake, Lisa whispered. Her friend was alive, somehow surviving inside the alien fleet. There's more, Marcus said, still working to clear the signal. Slaves from hundreds of species. Building resistance network. Vorthic weak without slaves. Send this message to Earth. The transmission cut off suddenly. Marcus tried to re-establish contact, but there was nothing. Where did that come from? Lisa asked. One of the larger ships in the center of the fleet, Amy reported. But the signal was routed through multiple sources. Whoever sent it knows how to hide their communications. Lisa stared at the sensor display, her mind racing. Jake was alive, and he was organizing some kind of resistance inside the Vorthic fleet. But what had he meant about the Vorthic being weak without slaves? Amy, scan those ships more carefully, Lisa ordered. Look for life signs, energy patterns, anything that might tell us about the crew composition. Amy worked in silence for several minutes, her instruments probing the alien vessels. Finally, she looked up with surprise on her face. Captain, this is incredible. Each of those ships is carrying thousands of life forms, but only a small percentage of them are Vorthic. The majority appear to be other species. Slaves, Lisa said, understanding flooding through her. Jake said they have slaves from hundreds of species. The Vorthic aren't running their own ships. They're using enslaved labor to do it for them. That would explain the system failures Amy detected, and added, if the slaves are sabotaging the ships from within ... then the Vorthic fleet might not be as unstoppable as it looks, Lisa finished. We need to get this information back to Earth immediately. But even as she said it, Lisa knew that Earth couldn't stop an invasion fleet this size, even if the Vorthic were having internal problems. Humanity needed more time to prepare, and Jake's resistance network might be the only thing that could buy them that time. Marcus, can you send a coded transmission back to Jake's position? Lisa asked. I can try, but if the Vorthic detect it, they'll know we're here. Do it, Lisa decided. Jake needs to know that Earth is aware of the threat. Marcus sent a brief coded message toward the alien fleet, then immediately began monitoring for any response from the Vorthic. Minutes passed in tense silence. No response from the Vorthic, Marcus reported. Either they didn't detect the transmission, or they don't consider us a threat. Let's hope it's the first option, Lisa said. Amy, continue monitoring the fleet. I want to know about every power fluctuation, every system failure, every sign that Jake's resistance is working. As the hours passed, the scope of the sabotage became clear. Ships throughout the Vorthic fleet were experiencing Tay. Jake stood in the maintenance tunnel deep inside the Vorthic command ship, surrounded by representatives from dozens of enslaved species. The tunnel was one of the few places on the ship where they could meet without being detected by the Vorthic security systems. The message got through, Lyra reported, her silver eyes gleaming with excitement. I sensed the emotions of the humans when they received it. They know we are here, and they know what is coming. Good, Jake said, but that's only the first step. Earth can't stop this invasion fleet with military force alone. We have to do it from the inside. Kix stepped forward, his insect-like features showing determination that would have seemed impossible just months ago. My people have finished mapping the critical systems throughout the fleet. We can disable primary power, navigation, and life support on most of the ships simultaneously. And my warriors are ready, Grok added. The Koran remember how to fight, even after all these years. When the time comes, we will take the weapons and secure the ship. Jake looked around at the faces of his fellow rebels. Over the past months, He had watched them transform from broken slaves into something they own. Vorthik had never imagined a unified resistance force with abilities that complemented each other perfectly. "Are all the ships ready?" Jake asked. "Lyra has been in contact with the Mistai on every vessel in the fleet," Kix reported. "The resistance networks are in place throughout the Armada. When we give the signal, over 300 ships will experience simultaneous system failures. The Vorthik will try to use their automated backup systems," Jake said. "Can we handle those?" "Already taken care of," Kix said with what might have been a smile. "My people have been very busy in the computer course. The backup systems will fail just as spectacularly as the primary ones." Jake nodded, feeling a mixture of pride and fear. What they were about to attempt had never been tried before in galactic history. A coordinated slave uprising across an entire fleet, timed to coincide with their master's most important military operation. "Remember," Jake said, "the goal isn't to destroy the ships. We need them intact so we can send some of them back to your home worlds. The goal is to take control and prove to the galaxy that the Vorthik can be beaten." "And what about the Vorthik themselves?" asked Vera, one of the blue-skinned humanoids whose people had been enslaved for over a century. "They will not surrender quietly. Some will fight," Jake admitted, "but Lyra has been monitoring their thoughts. Most of them are terrified of losing their slaves. They've become so dependent on us that they don't know how to operate their own technology anymore." High Commander Zefek stood on the bridge of his flagship, reviewing the final preparations for the invasion of Earth. The primitive human world would fall within hours of their arrival. Their crude weapons and simple ships would be no match for the might of the Vorthik Empire. "Status report," he commanded. "All ships are in formation and ready for the final jump to the human system," reported his aide. "However, we are still experiencing technical difficulties throughout the fleet." Zefek frowned. The mechanical problems had been increasing over the past weeks, but his engineers assured him they were just the normal wear and tear of operating such a large fleet. "How many ships are affected?" "Approximately 60% are reporting minor issues," the aide said. "Power fluctuations, navigation errors, communication glitches. Nothing that should affect combat operations." "Very well," Zefek said. "Begin the final jump sequence." Throughout the Vorthik fleet, enslaved beings received Lyra's telepathic signal. In maintenance tunnels, cargo bays, and engine rooms across hundreds of ships, the rebellion began. Kix and his fellow Zilani disconnected power couplings and rerouted energy flows, sending carefully calculated surges through the ship's electrical systems. Grok led teams of Koran warriors to the weapons lockers, overpowering the surprised guards who had never expected resistance from broken slaves. On Zefek's flagship, Jake made his way to the bridge through maintenance shafts the Vorthik had forgotten existed. Beside him crawled Lyra and two other Mistai, using their telepathic abilities to confuse and disorient any Vorthik they encountered. "All ships report ready for jump," the navigator called out. "Execute," Zefek commanded Dot at that moment. Every critical system on the flagship died. The lights went out, artificial gravity failed, and the bridge was plunged into emergency lighting. Similar scenes were playing out across the entire fleet as centuries of suppressed anger and resentment finally exploded into coordinated action. "What is happening?" Zefek demanded, floating helplessly in the zero-gravity dot before anyone could answer. Jake dropped through an access panel onto the bridge, followed by a squad of armed Koran warriors. The Vorthik crew reached for their weapons, but they were too slow and too confused to mount an effective resistance. "Hello, Zefek," Jake said, pointing a captured Vorthik weapon at the High Commander. "Remember me? The primitive human you thought would make a good slave?" Zefek stared at Jake in shock. "This is impossible. You are a slave, Slaves do not rebel. That's where you made your mistake, Jake said. You assumed that enslaving someone's body means enslaving their spirit. But you can't chain a mind that refuses to be chained. Throughout the fleet, similar scenes were unfolding. The Vorthik, so dependent on their slaves that they had forgotten how to fight for themselves, were being overwhelmed by the very beings they had oppressed for so long. The revolution is spreading, Lyra reported, her eyes glowing with telepathic energy. Over 200 ships are now under our control. The remaining Vorthik vessels are trying to flee, but their navigation systems are failing. Jake looked at Zefik, who was floating in the zero gravity with an expression of complete bewilderment. You want to know how this happened? You created it yourself. Every species you enslaved had special abilities, special knowledge. But instead of respecting that, you tried to break them down into mindless workers. The Zelani are natural engineers who understand your technology better than you do. The Koran are warriors who never forgot how to fight. The Mistai can communicate across vast distances without using your communication systems. Every species you enslaved has been planning this rebellion for generations, waiting for someone to show them it was possible. You are one human, Zefek said weakly. How could one primitive being cause all this? Because humans have one ability you never bothered to study, Jake said. We're good at bringing people together. We're good at making others believe that things can be better than they are. Reports continued to come in from across the fleet. Ship after ship fell to the coordinated uprising. The few Vorthik vessels that remained under their crews control were isolated and surrounded by ships full of newly freed slaves who remembered what freedom felt like. It's over, Jake announced to the bridge. Your empire is finished. At that moment, Captain Lisa Stone's voice came through the communication systems. Her ship had arrived just in time to witness the final collapse of the Vorthik invasion fleet. Jake Morrison, this is Captain Stone of the Earth Defense Force. Are you receiving this transmission? Jake smiled as he activated the ship's communication. System. Lisa, good to hear from you. I was wondering when you'd show up. Jake, what's your status? Our sensors are showing massive disruptions throughout the alien fleet. The fleet is under new management, Jake said. The Vorthik Empire just experienced the biggest employee revolt in galactic history. Over the following hours, the full scope of the victory became clear. The massive invasion force that had been assembled to conquer Earth was now controlled by the very species the Vorthik had enslaved. Some Vorthik had surrendered and would face justice for their crimes. Others had fled in the few ships that remained under their control, scattered to the far reaches of space. What happens now? Lyra asked Jake as they stood on the bridge, looking out at the liberated fleet. Now we go home, Jake said. All of us. Every species that was enslaved gets their freedom back. Your people return to your worlds and rebuild your civilizations. And the humans? Grok asked. We help, Jake said. Humans are good at that too. We'll share our technology, our knowledge, our friendship. But we won't try to rule anyone. We've seen what happens when one species thinks it's superior to all the others. Months later, Jake stood in the headquarters of the newly formed Galactic Liberation Alliance, looking out at representatives from dozens of former slave species. They had come together not as conquerors or rulers, but as equals working toward a common goal, making sure that no species would ever again suffer under the kind of oppression that Vorthik had imposed. The universe is a big place, Jake said to the assembled delegates, full of wonders and dangers we can't even imagine yet. But if we work together, if we remember that our differences make us stronger rather than weaker, there's no challenge we can't face. The Vorthik had thought they were enslaving one human. Instead, they had triggered a revolution that freed hundreds of species and created a new kind of galactic civilization, one based on cooperation rather than domination. on respect rather than fear. And at the center of it all was a stubborn human who had refused to give up, who had reminded an entire galaxy what freedom could look like. Jake Morrison had started as a prisoner, but he had ended up becoming something far more important.